great to see you this morning. Thank you so much for coming out. We're very, very blessed to have such great scholars, such great faculty and staff. I want to first acknowledge Duane's family. So Marianne, Rebecca, I'm going to try to get it right. Joe is somewhere. Is that Joe? Okay, why don't you all stand? We want to acknowledge you, and I just met you.
Mary and Gary.
Thank you so much. I also want to acknowledge our distinguished professors. So we have quite a few here in the room. So I'd like for our distinguished professors to please stand. And I have a reason for saying that. All of our distinguished professors, please stand. All of our distinguished. One as well. I wanted to do that because as I get to know our distinguished professors, I'm often awed by not only their scholarship, but their character. You want some real role models, pay close attention. You want to know how to become a distinguished professor? We have fantastic role models. And I'm just really honored to be associated with you all. Now watch how this works. How about our Lifetime Achievement Award winners? Would you please stand? Oh yeah, come on, just stand. Look at that correlation. How about that? That's pretty amazing, pretty amazing. Today we're going to honor a distinguished professor and our newest Lifetime Achievement Award winner. This is the highest honor we can bestow on our faculty. I have the privilege and the pleasure to get to know Dr. Duane Ireland very well. We're actually brothers. We're brothers from another mother, but we're connected at the hip. Trust me, whatever he knows, I know, and vice versa. So we run together, don't we?
We do.
Yeah, wonderful partner, just a wonderful partner. So he's going to share with you a little bit about his research journey. You're going to learn a lot about how he was able to really make such a real impact on the field. Just incredible impact. You'll also learn a little bit about entrepreneurship as he views entrepreneurship. Please help me welcome Dr. Duane Ireland.
Howdy. You just saw the wonderful and gratifying introduction that Dean Eli Jones delivered at the beginning of my induction ceremony as a Mays Lifetime Achievement Award winner. What we are pleased to present to you today is a recreation of the speech I delivered during the induction ceremony that was held on April the 20th of 2017. The purpose of the initial speech and this recreation of it is to describe my 40-year tale as an academic scholar and to talk about some of the work I've had the good fortune to be able to complete during the past 4 decades. As I noted during the April 20th speech, this is our 13th year as a member of the Mays Business School faculty. In many ways, it seems that it was only yesterday that we pulled into College Station in order to pursue the next chapter in our career as Aggies. I continue to place very high value on the opportunity to be a part of the Mays family and of Texas A&M University. As we begin a discussion of my tale as a scholar, I want to express my sincere appreciation to everyone here today. I am honored by your choice to spend your time attending this event. I value all of the friendships I have with so many, if not every one of you, and I look forward to continuing to collaborate with you as we seek to create value for Mays and all of our constituencies. A special thank you goes to all of the PhD students in the room. As we know, you are preparing yourself to be successful in what I and certainly so many others in the room believe is one of the greatest professions in the world. Rich Bettis from UNC Chapel Hill describes PhD students as the seed corn of the profession. I think this is an apropos description in that while some of us here today are close to representing our profession's past and others represent the present, you as PhD students are certainly our profession's future. I wish you well as you will soon begin forming the academic tale that you will be prepared to tell to others in perhaps 40 years or so. Finally, a sincere and heartfelt expression of gratitude to my family, both those who are here today and those who are watching from above. I was raised by my mother and grandmother, both of whom sacrificed a great deal to make things possible for me. I hope I've been able to bring them some joy and satisfaction through my efforts that they supported and through today's event. Although our family is small in numbers, it is large in spirit and love. In particular, I want to thank my wife, Mary Ann, and our children, Rebecca and Scott, for all of their incredible support for 40-plus years. In fact, Mary Ann and I will celebrate our 45th wedding anniversary this August. Over my career, the number of hours worked is far too large. Far too many weekends have been filled with my pounding of a laptop's keyboard, and far too few family vacations have been taken. Throughout it all, though, my family's support and encouragement have been strong and have never wavered. Truly, the award being received today honors their sacrifices and belongs to them as well as to me. With respect to the award itself, I'd like to say that I am indeed deeply honored to receive it. This is not something that a kid growing up in Lima, Ohio, and then Amarillo, Texas, ever imagined would happen. In fact, given my family's working background, my initial career aspiration was to rise to a conductor position with the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad Company. Reaching such a goal would have been valued by my relatives, many of whom had careers in the railroad industry. If nothing else, today's event shows the importance of remaining flexible and open to opportunities that surface as we develop the tale that becomes the description of our career. Before I describe my tale as a scholar, where a tale is thought of as a narrative of a series of events, I want to first congratulate the previous winners of this award, Mike Hitt, Lynn Berry, and Rajan Veridarajan. These scholars, with scholars being defined as learned people, are role models for all of us. Their contributions to so many stakeholders are legendary and highly significant. Being a part of a group that includes these scholars is remarkably affirming and gratifying. So again, the most sincere congratulations to Mike, Lynn, and Rajan. Thank you for all you have done and for all you continue doing. And now I'd like to mention 4 principles that have informed my scholarly work and the tale it tells. The first principle is my belief that a vital commitment for a scholar to make is to dedicate her or himself to intellectual growth throughout their career. In this sense, our ability to contribute to those we serve is a function of continuous learning. If we stop learning, our capacity to meaningfully inform stakeholders through our scholarship is diminished substantially. I have always found this to be an exciting part of a scholar's journey, in that little is more invigorating than knowing that virtually on a daily basis we have opportunities to learn more about phenomena we observe and research questions we consider. The need to make a difference through our scholarship is the second principle that guides my career. Andrew Pettigrew describes this need, saying that through our research and teaching, we need to make a difference that positively affects those we serve. To make a difference, our work must be interesting. Murray Davis famously expressed this perspective, saying that to make a difference, our scholarship must be interesting to the audience we serve at a point in time. In Davis's words, the first criterion by which people judge anything they encounter, even before deciding whether it is true or false, is whether it is interesting or boring. Here is another and complementary perspective about interesting scholarship. Academics and practitioners both value research that is interesting, in the sense that it questions basic assumptions and beliefs, and is justified in the sense that its claims are well supported by the evidence. Another way to think about these comments about interesting work is to understand that in order to be interesting, our scholarship must have a hook that grabs an audience's attention. But what audiences do we serve as scholars, and how do we serve each audience? Answers to these questions yield the third principle. Ernest Boyer and his colleagues argue that as scholars, we are challenged to engage with knowledge. But his and their work expands our domain of knowledge, proposing that knowledge is created through 4 types of scholarship: the scholarships of discovery, integration, application, and teaching. And consistent with Davis's argument, we are challenged to produce interesting work when engaging with each type of scholarship. Here is how Boyer and his colleagues operationalize the different types of scholarship. In mentioning these operationalizations, I'll link each one to a journal from my field to indicate how different journals seek to publish different types of knowledge. The differences in types of scholarship that journals publish is shown by their idiosyncratic mission statements. Of course, there are parallel journals in accounting, finance, information and operations management, and marketing that publish work addressing each of the 4 types of scholarship. The scholarship of discovery involves being the first to find out, to know, and to reveal. Boyer says, "Discovery reflects the commitment to developing knowledge for its own sake, to freedom of inquiry, and to following in a disciplined fashion an investigation wherever it may lead. From my discipline, the Academy of Management Journal is dedicated to publishing this type of scholarship." The scholarship of integration creates knowledge by bringing together and integrating isolated knowledge from diverse fields. Typically, these integrations are a product of creatively weaving together insights associated with different theories that inform our understanding of different disciplines. From my field, the Academy of Management Review publishes this type of work. The scholarship of application finds scholars considering the following question: how can knowledge be responsibly applied to consequential problems? Essentially, the interest here is to apply the results of our discovery and integration work in ways that informs practitioners' understanding of the insights associated with our domain of interest. The former Academy of Management executive published, and today's Academy of Management Perspectives publishes, this type of work. Finally, the scholarship of teaching highlights scholars' efforts to contribute to creating others' skills, character, mind, and ability to think critically. In the management domain, the Academy of Management Learning and Education publishes scholarship that is intended to inform what and how we teach. I have explicitly sought to contribute to the scholarships of discovery, integration, application, and teaching throughout my career. Moreover, in my view, it is only by creating knowledge that informs each type of scholarship that we reach our full potential as scholars. I also believe that in some manner, all of my research informs the scholarship of teaching, in that, as appropriate, I seek to integrate the results of my efforts to engage in the scholarships of discovery, integration, and application into what I teach my students and how I engage with them as active learners. While I have published some articles that deal with the scholarship of teaching, most of my research is framed around questions associated with the other 3 types of scholarship. My 4th principle reflects my belief about how we grow as scholars for the purpose of being able to successfully engage with the 4 types of scholarship. In order to explain this final principle, I am going to be a bit loose in my operationalizations of some familiar terms. At the core of this principle is my belief that scholars can achieve intellectual growth organically, through collaborative relationships, and through mergers. And of course, there is overlap among these 3 types of growth. To grow organically, scholars devote time and energy to studying their domain, carefully examining published work, continuously thinking about how different theories inform the relationships they want to test, and trying as diligently as possible to maintain pace with rapidly developing and changing methodologies are examples of actions scholars take to grow organically. Academic collaborations find scholars deciding to work together to investigate a particular research question. Collaborations come about because of mutual scholarly interest and/or complementary skill sets that when integrated create synergy through which a dyadic relationship yields more significant outcomes than each scholar would achieve working independently. While I speak about dyadic relationships here for simplicity purposes, collaborations obviously can involve more than two scholars. An academic merger is a product of successful collaborations across time and projects. Here, scholars explicitly choose to continue working together, largely because of successes achieved through previous collaborations. An academic merger is a partnership of equals. Thus, every merger is grounded in previously completed collaborations. However, for a variety of reasons, every collaboration or every set of collaborations will not lead to a merger. Let me cite a recent personal example to demonstrate scholarly growth as achieved organically through a previously established merger and through newly formed collaborations. Matt Josephy and Scott Cuban graduated last year from the Mays PhD program with concentrations in management. As PhD students, they experienced organic growth as a result of carefully studying various literature's insights about the topic of organizational size. Matt and Scott approached Mike Hitt and me to ask if we would be interested in collaborating with them to submit a paper dealing with organizational size to the Academy of Management Annals. As I'll explain later in greater detail, Mike and I long ago developed an academic merger, given our mutual interest and complementary skill sets. In part, this merger has lasted for 40 years because of the success we've had, as well as because of our similar interest and complementary skill sets. So with the example I am providing here, we have a collaboration that was initially formed between two PhD students who grew organically as scholars by studying the organizational size literature. As a dyad forming a collaboration, Matt and Scott then approached Mike and me to see if we would collaborate with them for the purpose of developing a manuscript dealing with the phenomenon known as organizational size. With this example, we have two newly formed collaborations, one between Matt and Scott, and then one between Matt and Scott and Mike and Duane. Fortunately, the collaboration among the four of us was successful in that our work was published by the Academy of Management Annals. Will this collaboration result in a merger between Matt and Scott and Mike and Duane? Such seems unlikely, given that Matt and Scott are now launching their own careers as members of the management faculties at IU and Tulane, respectively. However, the Hitt and Ireland merger will definitely continue even though Mike is formally retired. And given this project's success, as well as some other joint work with which Matt and Scott are involved, the two of them may at some point form a merger. If this happens, that merger would be a product of successful collaborations, as is the case for the merger between Mike and me. I should mention another important point here, and that is that as scholars, most of us are involved with multiple collaborations. However, most of us are involved with relatively few mergers in that they come about only as a result of successfully completed collaborations. Now, with these principles established, let's move to a formal description of my tale as a scholar. I completed my PhD in 1977. Using my first prompt of the day, I provide evidence that I did indeed complete a dissertation as the final task to the earning of the degree. There are two interesting points about the dissertation I'd like to offer. First, I typed the entire document myself using an IBM Selectmatic typewriter to do so. You can imagine how much enjoyment I had in typing the full dissertation and the quantity of correction tape I used during the process. The second item of interest is the nature of the questions I examined through this dissertation. The questions I examined are suggested by my dissertation's title, which is The Effect of Problem-Solving Procedure, Group Composition Classification, and Locus of Control Orientation on Idea Generation Performance and Group Participant Perceived Satisfaction Levels. Essentially, this is a study that was completed to better understanding the use of brainstorming as a problem-solving technique. Obviously, this topic has no true relationship with strategic management or entrepreneurship, the domains in which the vast majority of my scholarly work has been completed. And during my PhD program, business policy and organization theory were the management areas on which I concentrated. The reason for the topic that served as the foundation for my completed dissertation is a part of the tale requiring much more time to explain than we have today. So we'll provide that explanation at a different time for anyone who is interested in learning more. Importantly, though, notice that occasionally scholars must alter some of their current day activities, even such as designing and completing a dissertation, in order to support long-term plans. With the dissertation completed and the degree in hand, we started our career at Oklahoma State University. The deciding factor in our choice of OSU was the set of colleagues with whom I would be able to work as an assistant professor seeking promotion to an associate professor position with tenure. Mike Hitt, Kirk Downey, Bob Greer, and Dennis Middlemist formed the core set of scholars I knew I wanted to be around as an assistant professor. I also was confident that these four scholars represented a nucleus of talent with the potential to meaningfully and positively affect my efforts to become a scholar. This belief, in fact, proved to be the case. As it turned out, and only because my research interest lacked complementarity with theirs, I did not directly engage with Bob or Dennis on research projects while at OSU. Kirk and I successfully collaborated on a few projects, including one dealing with perceived environmental uncertainty, or PEU. Of course, Mike and I not only collaborated on projects, we quickly formed a merger that, as noted earlier, has now lasted for 40 years and remains active today. And I am proud to note that I remain friends with all four of these scholars and that our families remain in touch as well. Throughout my career, I have been involved with both research streams and research probes. Today, though, I will address only the core research streams. While interesting, the research probes with which I've been involved have typically led to only one or no more than 2 or 3 publications. As probes, they faded away so I could concentrate on the core research streams. So what about the core research streams? Working with Mike and initially with one of our OSU PhD students as well, grand corporate strategy is the first topic that we chose to study. This initial examination became the foundation for a research stream that remained active for many years and in ways is still active today. Focusing on grand corporate strategy as a topic of interest demonstrates the contextual nature of organizational phenomena and the questions we decide to examine as scholars. When this work was being completed in the late 1970s and early 1980s, what we know as corporate-level strategy did not exist. Indeed, the nature of the business policy field which is the precursor to strategic management, was the foundation for what was called grand corporate strategy. Research contributions from scholars such as William F. Glick from the University of Georgia and one of his PhD students, Larry Jauch, was informing our understanding of business policy through their study of grand corporate strategies. Moreover, scholars were beginning to suggest that firms formulated and implemented strategies beyond functional or product market strategies, even in diversified firms. Drawing from insights offered by business policy scholars at various institutions, but certainly including the Harvard Business School, arguments were being made that the effects of grand corporate strategy on organizational functions such as production operations, general management, engineering and research and development, and so forth, had the potential to affect a firm's financial performance. Today, when we study questions involving corporate-level strategy, our framing is much different in that our concern with the direct effects of this type of strategy on organizational functions within a diversified firm's units is much less intense. Our initial insight for the research we started conducting in the late 1970s and early 1980s was that the effect of 4 types of grand corporate strategies: stability, internal growth, external acquisitive growth, and retrenchment, on 7 organizational functions would be moderated by the type of production system the firm employed and by PEU. I should note here that PEU was a hot topic during the time period of this work and was thought to moderate many types of organizational relationships. The set of issues formed the core of Kiamas Palia's dissertation that Mike and I co-chaired. This work led to a publication in the Academy of Management Journal and a scholarly book, which is my second prompt. The value of writing a scholarly book, I believe, is the opportunity doing so affords one to examine a core question or two with breadth and depth. Moreover, a scholarly book should provide important insights about a field's understanding of a specific domain or a specific aspect of a domain at a point in time. I believe that scholars should take pride in their ability to use their research as a foundation for completing a scholarly book. Results regarding the research and development organizational function in our initial grand corporate strategy study inform questions that we pursued next. These pursuits lasted for a number of years and involved several collaborations. However, the merger Mike and I formed was at the core of most of this work. To set the stage, let me say that while conducting the initial research concerned with the effects of grand corporate strategies on organizational functions, we discovered the importance of R&D to a firm's success, as well as some interesting effects of external acquisitions on R&D and a firm's ability to innovate. Recall that external acquisitions was one of the grand corporate strategies we examined in our initial work. As noted, these results stimulated a long-term interest in 3 core topics: corporate level strategy, mergers and acquisitions, and innovation. I'll mention just a few of the publications that resulted from examining questions associated with these core topics. To study an array of questions concerned with corporate level strategy, mergers and acquisitions, and innovation, we often collaborated with Bob Hoskinson, a longtime member of the A&M Management Group, and Jeff Harrison, a strategy scholar whose son, Joseph, just defended his dissertation about a month ago and is now preparing to move to TCU to begin his scholarly journey. As this set of experiences demonstrates, the academic profession does yield interesting and often unexpected intersections over the years. In ways, for a period of time, there was a merger among Hitt, Ireland, Hoskinson, and Harrison, through which questions associated in some form or fashion with corporate level strategy, mergers and acquisitions, and innovation were examined. In one of these studies, which appears in AMJ, we assessed the argument that acquisitions lead to lower investments in R&D and curtail the championing process whereby members of an organization internally promote new products and processes. The results confirmed these expectations in that acquisitions were found to have a negative effect on R&D intensity and patent intensity. Other issues examined in this stream include those of the possibility that synergy is created through acquisitions because of resource heterogeneity rather than resource homogeneity. This paper appears in the Journal of Management. The possibility that acquisitions may be what we called a poison pill for a firm's innovation efforts. This work is published in the Academy of Management Executive and was our first explicit attempt to translate some of our scholarship of discovery and integration into the scholarship of application. And finally, identifying a detailed set of attributes that our research, as well as the results of other scholarly efforts, show to be involved with successful acquisitions, and a different set of attributes the results indicate are involved with unsuccessful acquisitions. Combined, all of this work, and particularly the study I just mentioned, resulted in another scholarly book, which is prop number 3 for the day. In an overall sense, the work we were completing at this time also piqued our interest in industry effects, in that variances in our results because of industry differences were beginning to be an important part of the stories our results were telling. This interest led to a collaboration involving Greg Dess, Mike Hitt, and me. Resulting from this collaboration is a paper titled Industry Effects and Strategic Management Research, published some time ago in the Journal of Management in 1990. This work seems to have challenged us as strategic management scholars to enhance our understanding of the importance of accounting for industry effects when designing and executing studies. While examining questions associated with corporate-level strategy, mergers and acquisitions, and innovation, we began developing an interest to assess the effects of international or geographic diversification on innovation. Our prior work had focused on the impact of product diversification on innovation. Here, we expanded our interest to include an analysis of the effects of international diversification as well as product diversification on firm innovation and performance. Focusing on the scholarship of integration, we explicated theoretical arguments about these issues in a Journal of Management paper and tested some of these ideas empirically by completing a study that was published in AMJ. New venture firms were the sample for this study. This sample selection decision was a product of the observation that increasingly in the late 1990s, new venture firms were internationalizing their operations at the time of founding or shortly thereafter. Organizational learning was also a part of the story we examined in this study and was an initial foray into our interest in organizational resources and configurations of those resources. This interest became stronger because of the next research stream I'll mention. Moreover, analyzing resources in some form or fashion is contextually important as a result of the influence of the resource-based view of the firm on strategic management and entrepreneurship-related work. Given time constraints, I'll merely mention here that Mike and I have been associated with several projects for the purpose of examining resource-based view of the firm questions. For me, the most influential outcome of these efforts is our publication in the Academy of Management Review with Mike's former PhD student, David Sermon. In this work, we use theories to explicitly describe how firms actually use resources for the purpose of enhancing firm performance. Published in 2007, time has shown that this work has influenced the explication of a number of resource-based arguments that scholars have chosen to examine. During our time at OSU, and continuing throughout certainly the first part of my tenure at Baylor University, another research stream was developing for me. Part of this interest was a product of our increasing recognition of the link in large organizations between employees having an entrepreneurial orientation and being committed to taking entrepreneurial actions and the resulting effects on innovation. Additionally, though, the fact that I held the Curtis Hankamer Chair in Entrepreneurship at Baylor played a role in this developing research stream. As the holder of this chair, the then current dean challenged me to orient more of my research attention to questions embedded within the entrepreneurship domain. This request was not unreasonable given that entrepreneurship was foundational to the reputation Hankamer sought to develop with donors and the academic community. But first, let me mention a few of the research probes with which I've been involved in the entrepreneurship domain. Corporate entrepreneurship, middle-level managers' effects on firms' entrepreneurial behaviors, the concept of opportunity as understood by entrepreneurs and as examined by scholars, and finally, enduring entrepreneurship, where the desire is to understand why some organizations are able to remain entrepreneurial across time while others are not. These probes have been interesting, enjoyable, and productive in that they have informed other entrepreneurship-related work with which I've been involved. Today, though, strategic entrepreneurship and entrepreneurship in the informal economy are the most fascinating issues in the entrepreneurship space to which I am devoting attention. As a construct, strategic entrepreneurship resulted from discussions Mike and I were having during the middle to the latter part of the 1990s. Recall that I had started working in the entrepreneurship space and was engaging in some of the probes I mentioned just a moment ago. Recall also that the work with which Mike and I were involved around the topics of corporate level strategy, mergers and acquisitions, and innovation suggested innovation's importance to firm performance. Our results were also indicating, though, that both entrepreneurship's and innovation's positive outcomes within firms were not random in nature. Rather, our findings, as well as those being reported by other scholars, indicated that the positive outcomes we were observing were a product of intentional and organized commitments and actions, the kind of commitments and actions that took place when firms formed and executed strategies. Thus, it occurred to us that firms that simultaneously focused on and sought to integrate strategy and entrepreneurship would be the most successful. More specifically, in our first effort to publish our ideas about what we called strategic entrepreneurship, we suggested that strategic entrepreneurship results when firms simultaneously emphasize and pursue opportunity-seeking behavior and advantage-seeking behavior. Of course, the opportunity-seeking behavior is entrepreneurship in action, while the advantage-seeking behavior is strategic management in action. Our initial publication dealing with strategic entrepreneurship appears in a book chapter published in 2000. Believing that the scholarship of integration we were pursuing with respect to this topic was important, Mike and I collaborated briefly with two others, Don Sexton and Michael Camp, to further pursue this line of inquiry. To stimulate interest in this topic and to encourage scholars to begin working in this space, the four of us hosted a conference at the Kauffman Foundation headquarters, published an academic book that includes the papers presented during that conference as chapters. This book is my final prop of the day. The four of us also guest edited two special issues dealing with strategic entrepreneurship. The special issue of the Strategic Management Journal was framed around the scholarships of discovery and integration, while the Academy of Management Executive Special Issue was framed around the scholarship of application. The special issues resonated with scholars and appeared to stimulate additional work in the SE space. Based on the research that was being completed in the SE space and our own thinking about the construct, Mike and I, along with David Sermon, explicated what we envisioned to be a foundational model of strategic entrepreneurship. This work was published in the Journal of Management in 2003. This model and subsequent updates to it, with which we and other scholars have been involved, continue to inform research that is being completed to further study the strategic entrepreneurship construct. Although not solely responsible, our work in strategic entrepreneurship strongly contributed to the establishment of a new journal in 2006. Called the Strategic Entrepreneurship Journal, Mike was the initial co-editor, along with Dan Schindel, of this journal, which launched its first issue in 2007. Now in its 11th year since its founding, SEJ is a major journal that continues to publish work that informs our understanding of the role strategic management and entrepreneurship play in firm success. I believe the future for SE work is incredibly bright and that many, many questions remain for scholars to explore as a means of enhancing our understanding of what appears to be an important construct. Mike Hitt and I continue working in this space. Additionally, I am involved with SE-related projects with Mike Withers, Danny Miller, and two of our current PhD students, Joseph Harrison and Richard Scoresby, and David Voss, one of our former PhD students. Entrepreneurship in the informal economy is another research stream in which I retain a strong interest. Work in this domain resulted from a conversation Justin Webb and I had when he was a PhD student in our program. In essence, the issue we wanted to explore was why entrepreneurial ventures that were operating illegally as specified by formal laws, rules, and regulations were sometimes able to succeed, both in the short and long term. Based on insights in various literatures and drawing extensively from institutional theory, we argued that influencing the success of the type of firms we are mentioning here was the reality that a meaningful segment of a society viewed the firm's actions as legitimate, even if the formal part of a society deemed their actions to be illegal. Firms whose actions are concluded to be illegal by formal institutions, while simultaneously are deemed to be legitimate by informal institutional norms, values, and beliefs, operate in what is called the informal economy. To me, this is a fascinating research stream given the prominence of the informal economy in many of the world's regions and nations and the importance of entrepreneurship as a path to economic development in those regions and countries. Thus, our initial interest was to understand why some entrepreneurial ventures are able to achieve success when launching and then operating in the informal economy. Our initial effort in this space, through a collaboration with Laszlo Tiani of our faculty and David Sermon, led to an article that appears in the Academy of Management Review. In this work, we integrate multiple theories for the purpose of explaining how entrepreneurial ventures that formal institutions deem to be acting illegally are able, at least for an initial period of time and often on a long-term basis, to survive and even perform quite well. My efforts in this space, in collaboration with others and through a merger with Justin Webb, has led to publications in Entrepreneurship Theory and Practice, the Journal of Business Venturing, Strategic Entrepreneurship Journal, and the Academy of Management Prospectus, in addition to the core work appearing in AMR. I've also been involved with two special issues in this space, one for SEJ and one for JBV. As we see, guest editing special issues is an excellent path to pursue to expose multiple scholars to a domain for the purpose of stimulating their interest. Over time and collaborating with others, I've guest edited 12 special issues of journals. Currently, Justin and I are collaborating with others to examine paths firms may follow to transition from operating in the informal economy to operating in the formal economy. There are two final aspects of my tale that I would like to quickly mention. First, I believe that editorial service, and especially service as an associate editor or as an editor, yields incredibly valuable contributions to a scholar's ability to produce significant and influential scholarship. Throughout my career, I've been a member of 23 editorial review boards. I've been blessed to have chances to serve as an associate editor for the Academy Management Journal and for the Academy of Management Executive, as a consulting editor for Entrepreneurship Theory and Practice, and as editor for the Academy Management Journal. In these leadership roles, a scholar learns so much about scholarship as she or he studies others' work and measures its value relative to a particular journal's publishing standards. Seeing how scholars integrate different theories in order to form interesting relationships that can then be tested empirically is fascinating. And observing different methods that scholars use to test those relationships is also incredibly valuable. Perhaps the greatest benefit of all, though, that a scholar derives from editorial service, and certainly from being an associate editor or from being an editor, is the challenge associated with assessing scholarly work relative to a field or a domain's standards and a journal's publishing standards. In my view, being challenged to think through the design and execution of a scholar's scholarship relative to standards yields growth opportunities for an individual scholar that have immense value. Service to the academic community is the final part of my tale as a scholar that I'd like to address today. While we serve our local institution in many ways, I also believe that part of being a scholar is to formally and meaningfully give back to the broader academic community. A key way to do this, if one is fortunate enough to have the opportunity, is to become an active participant in one or more of the academic associations that are part of a scholar's field. For me, the Academy of Management is the association I wanted to actively serve. I joined the Academy in 1975 as a PhD student. This means that I am now in my 42nd year as an active member of this association. I am so fortunate to have had many, many opportunities to serve the Academy in leadership roles. This service culminated with my 5 years in the Academy's leadership structure, which included serving as president of the Academy of Management in 2014. Actively serving an association yields many scholarly benefits, including those of meeting and interacting with other scholars who are also members of the association, being exposed to a never-ending set of scholarly ideas that flow from interactions with scholars, and having opportunities to influence scholarly dialogues. A key example of me having an opportunity to influence a scholarly dialogue occurred in 2012 when, as program chair for the Academy of Management, I was able to choose the informal economy as the theme for that year's annual meeting. Selecting this theme stimulated work that is oriented to enhancing our scholarly understanding of the informal economy with respect to the 4 types of scholarship we've considered today. And now I'd like to return to this presentation's title, which is A Scholar's Tale Seeking to Create Value Through Breadth and Depth. As a scholar, I've tried to create value for those I believe scholars are tasked to serve, and I have tried to do so through breadth and depth. Breadth is potentially demonstrated by my efforts to contribute to all 4 types of scholarship, to serve in editorial capacities, to serve academic associations, primarily the Academy Management, and finally, to serve in leadership roles at Baylor University and Texas A&M University. Depth is potentially demonstrated by my wonderful fortune to, first, publish articles in an array of journals, second, be an associate editor 3 times and an editor once, third, be involved in leadership roles for the Academy Management at the divisional level for the Business Policy and Strategy Division, and at the corporate level, and fourth, hold different leadership roles at Baylor for 11 years and now for 5 years and counting in Mays Business School. I have indeed been incredibly blessed by all of these breadth and depth related opportunities. I could not be more fortunate than is the case, and I have worked with an array of outstanding individuals when completing all of these activities. In closing, I'd like to offer a few perspectives that have evolved as a result of experiencing the tale I've been so lucky to be asked to tell you today. So here are perspectives that guide my scholarship and my attempts to serve stakeholders as a scholar. I hope that you will find one or more of these perspectives to be of some value while pursuing your scholarly journey. Chart your direction by forming your vision and mission. I believe that as scholars, each of us needs to think carefully about what we want our career to say about us or to demonstrate about us. Once this vision is formed, the scholar is ready to specify actions in the form of a mission statement that is to be pursued to reach his or her vision. Be proud of your work, but be humble. It is right to be proud of the work we complete in terms of the 4 types of scholarship. By the same token, we should be humble in that there are always more research questions to study, and there is always someone else who is more productive than we are, who is more insightful, and who, in terms of making significant contributions, is a more influential scholar, at least at a point in time. Complete your scholarship and let it speak for you. Consistent with the humility called for with the perspective I just mentioned, I think that as scholars we should complete our work and let it speak for us. In my view, we should never advocate for our scholarship, nor should we suggest its superiority to other scholars' contributions. Multitask but focus. As my tale shows, and as is the case for many of you, successful engagement with the 4 types of scholarship requires scholars to simultaneously pursue several actions. Even though we must multitask, we'll be more successful in doing so if we can also find periods of time where we can use a laser-like focus to complete a task. Be local and be cosmopolitan. Commit to effective service both to your local institution and to your full academic community. As scholars, we provide knowledge that others consume. Through the scholarships of discovery and integration, we develop knowledge that is then consumed by others as we engage in the scholarships of application and teaching. Thus, scholars work at the intersection of knowledge production and knowledge consumption. The opportunity to both create and disseminate knowledge is a unique role that scholars fulfill. Challenge yourself to be the best you can be. Being a scholar is a privilege earned by relatively few. Cherish the opportunity you've earned and commit to being the best you can be as the foundation for your service to others. Remember, it isn't about you, it's about them. In my view, a scholar's tale should be filled with examples of service contributions that are effective, meaningful, and selfless. In this sense, the scholarship we produce isn't about us. Rather, it is about how our scholarship creates knowledge that can be used to solve consequential problems and that can stimulate critical thinking among our students. Commit to making a difference through your scholarship. As part of your vision and/or mission, consider the possibility of strongly committing to making a difference on a daily basis to others through the scholarship you produce and disseminate. Finally, step up, frequently and proudly. As scholars, we are called to serve others through discovery, integration, application, and teaching. Gladly accept the opportunities you will have to serve others as a scholar and consistently step up to boldly, energetically, and completely accept those opportunities. And there you have it. That is the tale I have to tell, and I am sticking to the story. Thank you again for being here today. Thank you for listening to my tale. Thank you for the honor of receiving this award, and gig 'em. Thank you very much.
Hold on for 1 second. We'll pull it off in just a second, but I want to at least present the award. Okay? Beautiful award. R. Duane, Ireland, Executive Associate Dean, University Distinguished Professor, Benton Kokenauer Chair in Business, as the 2017 Lifetime Achievement Award for Research and Scholarship honoree. Please join me here, Dr. Ireland.